Greetings, and welcome back to MyfanwyNia studio here in Leitrim's Iron Mountains. My name is Harriet, and today I will be sharing another short watercolour time-lapse in my sketchbook. We are just over a week into Mermay, so this piece is another one of my mermaid pieces. The prompt list that I am following is by fellow YouTuber Erica Joy. And Erica has a much better momentum than me. She's posting daily videos on her channel, so do go along and check out all of Erica's beautiful watercolour paintings. I will leave a link to her channel below the video. I will also leave a link to her inspirational prompt list if you would like to join in for the rest of the month of May. This footage is from day 8 and the prompt was Boho. Boho is a term which is an abbreviation of Bohemian. And whenever I think of Bohemian, I can't help but think of the Moulin Rouge and Art Nouveau. But the term and its stylistic aesthetics derive from the French bohème, which was originally a term with predatory undertones, used to identify the Romany gypsies, a people who arrived to the French capital through Bohemia, a country which is now part of the Czech Republic. In Paris in the 19th century, when artists and creators began to concentrate in lower-rent, lower-class Romany neighborhoods, but the connotation rapidly became a romantic one, when the term was later and more broadly applied to those who lived an eccentric, unusual lifestyle that was based on a love for the arts and the pursuits of pleasure, sexual freedom, and travel. A bohemian was considered a citizen of the world, to whom sensual and artistic necessities are almost primordial, and the norms and traditions of conventional society seem frivolous, arbitrary, and hypocritical. Its foundations in the Romantic movement of the 19th century imbued bohemians with an almost quasi-religious sense of purpose. Flowing gypsy clothes became all the fashion, sparking a style which still lives on today through the lovers of contemporary boho chic. For my mermaid, in boho style, I wanted to represent some of these elements of the costume to stylize her as a gypsy mermaid, that iconic fortune teller type gypsy with big gold rings and a coin skirt that jangles in the wind. So I drew her with a crystal ball and tried to give her some of the styling that is so synonymous with boho, including harlequin patchwork skirt and some paisley style patterns on the end of her fins. I wanted to try and keep her colours a little bit more neutral. I focused on a burgundy red and a grey teal colour scheme, but I did add some elements of a yellow gold in her skirt and some hints of green to create a colourful patchwork skirt for her. The ball that she's holding, I wanted it to be like a scrying ball, which is more on the black side of a crystal ball. On her skirt, I gave her some gold coins because for some reason I can't help but think of coin skirts and like bells and chankly kind of movement in their walk when I think of this kind of gypsy style. So I wanted to add little elements of that to the piece as well. And I do like the colour scheme. I think it suits the vintage style that I was going for. I feel this piece has a different feel from some of my previous mermaids. I added a lot of little details to this piece, and I do really like how this piece turned out. Following on from my previous 4 videos, where I have been narrating Hans Christian Andersen's The Little Mermaid, just a little recap. We introduced the Little Mermaid and her 6 sisters, and the old queen and her father, who live in the palace beneath the waves. The Little Mermaid is longing to be part of the human world, and she has visited the sea witch, so she may get a spell, so she can get legs. In order to win an immortal soul, she has to marry the prince who she has become completely besotted with. So she has got the potion from the sea witch, and to get the potion she has traded her voice. And the witch tells her when she takes the potion and gets her legs, every step will be like walking on knives and pins. So in the last part of the story, we left off with the Little Mermaid heading up to the shore with the witch's magical potion. I'll read on from here for the rest of the video. The Little Mermaid by Hans Christian Andersen, Part 5. The sun had not yet appeared when she saw the prince's palace and went up the magnificent marble staircase. The moon shone wonderfully clearly, and the little mermaid downed the fiery sharp drink, and it was as if a two-edged sword went right through her fine body, and she fainted and lay as if dead. When the sun was shining over the sea, she woke up and felt a searing pain, but right in front of her, the handsome young prince was standing. He fixed his jet-black eyes on her, so she lowered hers and saw that her fish's tail was gone, and that she had the most attractive small white legs any young girl could have. But she was completely naked, so she wrapped herself up in her long tresses. The prince asked who she was and how she had come to be there, and she looked at him so gently and sorrowfully with her dark blue eyes, but she could not speak, you see. Then he took her by the hand and led her into the palace. Every step she took was, as the witch said, was as if she was treading on pointed needles and sharp knives. But she put up with this gladly. With the prince's hand holding hers, she rose as light as a soap bubble, and he and everyone else marveled at her elegant flowing walk. She was dressed in priceless clothes of silk and muslin. She was the most beautiful of all of those at the palace, but she was a mute, unable to sing or speak. Lovely slave girls dressed in silk and gold came forward and sang for the prince and his royal parents. A song more beautiful than all the others. The prince had clapped his hand and smiled at her, and then the little mermaid felt sad, for she knew that herself would have sung more beautifully. She thought, oh, if only he knew that in order to be with him, I have given my voice away for all eternity. Now the slave girls danced gracefully, flowing dances to the loveliest music, and the little mermaid lifted her white arms and raised herself and tiptoed and floated across the floor. She danced as if no one had ever danced before, and her every movement, her loveliness became more and more apparent, and her eyes spoke more profoundly to the heart than the singing of the slave girls. Everyone was enchanted by this, particularly the prince, who called her his little fondling, and she danced more and more, even though every time her foot touched the ground, it was as if she was treading on a sharp knife. The prince said that she would be with him always, and she was allowed to sleep outside his door on a velvet cushion. He had a man's costume sewn for her so that she could follow him on horseback. They rode through the fragrant forest where the green branches brushed her shoulders and the small birds sang behind the fresh green leaves. She climbed with the prince on the high mountains, and although her fine feet bled so that the others noticed it, she merely laughed at this and followed him until they saw the clouds sailing beneath them as if they were a flock of birds flying off to the foreign lands. Back at the prince's palace, when the others were asleep, she went out to the broad marble staircase. It cooled her burning feet, and there, in the cold sea water, she thought of them down there in the depths of the ocean. One night her sisters came arm in arm, and they sang so sorrowfully as they swam across the waters. She waved to them, and they recognized her and told her how sad she had made them all. Every night after that they visited her, and one night far out she saw her old grandmother, who had not been up to the surface of the sea for many years, and the Sea King with his own crown on his head. They stretched out their arms towards her, but did not dare to come as close to the shore as her sisters did. Day by day, the prince became more dear to her, and he was fond of her, as one can be fond of a good dear child. But it never occurred to him to make her his queen, and she had to become his wife, otherwise she would never get an immortal soul, but on his wedding morning would become foam on the sea. "Aren't you fonder of me than all the rest?" the eyes of the little mermaid seemed to say, when he took her hand in his arm and kissed her on her lovely forehead. "Yes, you are the dearest of all to me," the prince said, "for you have the best heart of all of them. You are the most devoted to me, and resemble the young girl I once saw and surely will never find again. I was on a ship that was wrecked. The waves washed me ashore near a sacred temple where several young girls were in service. The youngest of them found me down on the shore and saved my life. I only saw her twice. She was the only one I could ever love in this world. But you resemble her. You almost replace her image in my soul. She belongs to the holy temple, and therefore good fortune have sent you to me. We shall never be parted." Alas, he doesn't know that I have saved his life, the little mermaid thought. I carried him over the sea to the forest where the temple stands. I sat behind the foam and waited to see if anyone would come. I saw the beautiful girl he is more fond of than me, and the mermaid sighed deeply. She was unable to cry. The girl belongs to the sacred temple, he has told me. She will never come out into this world, and they will not meet again. And I am with him. I see him every day, and I will take care of him. I will love him and sacrifice my life to him. But now the prince is to be married and have a lovely daughter of the king of the neighbouring country. People said that is why he is equipping his ship so magnificently. The prince is travelling to the land of the neighbouring king is the official explanation, but it is to see the neighbouring king's daughter. He is to have a large retinue with him. But the little mermaid shook her head and laughed. She knew the princes fought much better than all the rest. I must travel, he said to her. I must see the beautiful princess. My parents insist on it. They do not wish to force me to bring her home as my bride. I cannot love her. She does not look like the beautiful girl at the temple that you resemble. If I ever had to choose a bride, I would rather it be you, my speechless little fondling. And with eloquent eyes, he kissed her red lips and played with her long tresses and placed his head close to her heart so it dreamed of human happiness and an immortal soul. But you were not frightened of the sea, my mute child, he said, when they stood aboard the magnificent ship that was to take them to the lands of the neighbouring king. And he told her about the storms and the dead calm, about the strange fish in the ocean depths, and what the diver had seen there. And she smiled to his account, for of course she knew better than anyone else about the seabed. In the moonlit night, when everyone was asleep except for the mate that stand by the railings of the ship and stared down through the clear waters, and she seemed to see her father's palace. Higher up stood her grandmother with her silvery crown on her head and stared up through the swift currents and the keel of the ship. Then her sisters broke the surface of the sea. They stared sorrowfully at her and wrung their white hands. She waved to them, smiled, and wanted to tell them that things were going well and successfully for her. But the ship's buoy came closer and the sisters dived down. So he thought what he had seen had merely been white foam on the water. The next morning, the ship entered the harbour of the magnificent city of the neighbouring kingdom. All of the church bells rang out and trumpets sounded from high towers where soldiers stood with flags fluttering and glinting bayonets. There were festivities every single day, balls and parties in succession. But the princess was not present yet. She was being brought up far away, there in a sacred temple, they said, where she was learning the royal virtues. Finally, she arrived on the scene. The little mermaid was most eager to see her beauty, for she had to admit that she had never seen a fairer creature. Her skin was so fine and transparent, and behind the long dark eyelashes there smiled a pair of black-blue faithful eyes. "It's you," the prince said. "You who saved me when I lay as a corpse on the shore." And then he embraced his blushing bride. "Oh, I am far too fortunate," he said to the little mermaid. "The best thing I could ever have hoped for has been fulfilled for me. You will rejoice in my good fortune, and there you are more fond of me than all the others." And the little mermaid kissed his hand, and then seemed to feel her heart break. His wedding morning would bring her death and turn her into foam on the sea. That was The Little Mermaid by Hans Christian Andersen, Part 5. There is one last part of this story, so you'll have to wait until my next video to see how it ends. We are coming to the end of my time-lapse now, so if you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching. Do stay safe, and I'll see you all again soon for another video. Bye-bye!